There is a kind of exhaustion that sleep cannot cure. You can sleep for 8 hours and still wake up tired. You can sit in a quiet room and still hear 1,000 arguments inside your mind. You can have food on the table, money in the bank, people around you, and a life that appears perfectly acceptable from the outside, and still feel as though something inside you is constantly running. Perhaps you know that feeling. You replay conversations after they are over. You wonder why someone changed toward you. You imagine what people might be saying about you. You worry about tomorrow before tomorrow has even arrived. You remember something embarrassing from 5 years ago and somehow experience the emotion as though it happened 5 minutes ago. And then, when the mind finally becomes quiet for a moment, you reach for your phone. Another notification, another message, another opinion, another person's life, another reason to compare your existence with someone else's carefully edited version of theirs. And the cycle begins again. But here is the strange thing. The ancient Stoics lived through circumstances that would make many modern problems look insignificant. They faced war, political instability, exile, disease, poverty, betrayal, public humiliation, loss. And yet they developed a philosophy centered around something that modern society desperately searches for: inner peace. Not comfort, not constant happiness, not a life without problems. Peace. The kind of peace that remains standing when circumstances collapse. Imagine Rome nearly 2,000 years ago. The streets are crowded. Merchants shout. Horses move through the dust. Soldiers return from distant campaigns. Politicians compete for influence. Citizens worry about money, reputation, family, health, and survival. And somewhere within this chaos, a man sits alone with his thoughts. He is not trying to control Rome. He is trying to control himself. That distinction is the beginning of Stoicism. Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, had access to almost everything a human being could desire. Power, wealth, status, influence. Yet his private writings repeatedly return to the same battle. The battle for control of his own mind. Because power over the world does not guarantee power over yourself. You can command armies and still be controlled by anger. You can possess wealth and still be controlled by fear. You can receive admiration and still be controlled by the opinions of strangers. You can win an argument and still lose your peace. And this is where the Stoics understood something that modern psychology continues to explore. Your suffering is often intensified not only by what happens, but by what your mind does with what happens. A delayed message becomes rejection. A criticism becomes humiliation. Someone else's success becomes evidence that you are falling behind. A mistake becomes proof that you are inadequate. A difficult day becomes a prediction that your entire future will be difficult. The event happens once, but the mind can make you experience it 100 times. And perhaps the most dangerous part is that we often participate willingly. We keep checking, keep comparing, keep explaining, keep chasing, keep reacting, keep remembering, keep worrying. Then we wonder why peace feels so far away. The Stoics would ask a different question. Not, how can I make the world stop disturbing me? But, what am I doing that keeps disturbing myself? That question changes everything. Because perhaps inner peace does not begin when you finally get everything you want. Perhaps it begins when you stop doing the things that continually destroy the peace you already have. And today, we are going to uncover 7 of them. Some will be uncomfortable, because the first thing you must stop may be something you have mistaken for responsibility. The second may be something you have mistaken for love. Another may be something you have mistaken for ambition. And one of them may be so deeply connected to your identity that giving it up will feel almost like losing part of yourself. But stay until the final lesson, because the final lesson is not about other people. It is about the relationship you have with yourself. And that relationship determines whether every other Stoic principle becomes wisdom, or merely becomes another collection of words you agree with, but never live. We often imagine inner peace incorrectly. We imagine a peaceful life as one where nobody disappoints us, where our relationships are perfect, where our finances are stable, where our work goes according to plan, where everyone respects us, where nobody misunderstands us, where nothing unexpected happens. But that is not peace. That is favorable circumstances. And favorable circumstances can disappear overnight. The Stoics knew this because they lived in a world where uncertainty was unavoidable. Epictetus was born into slavery and later became a teacher of philosophy. He understood firsthand that external freedom and internal freedom were not the same thing. A person could possess physical freedom and remain enslaved to anger, greed, fear, vanity, or desire. Another person could have very little control over external circumstances and still cultivate an extraordinary degree of inner freedom. This is one of Stoicism's most powerful ideas. Freedom begins inside the mind. But inner freedom requires removing certain habits. Think of your mind as a room. If you fill that room with resentment, comparison, fear, unnecessary arguments, endless expectations, and constant judgment, you cannot simply walk into it and demand peace. You have to remove something. This is why today's lesson is not about adding another morning routine. It is not about buying another book. It is not about repeating positive affirmations for 5 minutes. It is about subtraction. Because sometimes becoming stronger is not about adding more. It is about carrying less resentment, less noise, less ego, less comparison, less attachment to things you cannot control, less need to prove yourself, less obsession with what other people think. And when those things begin to disappear, something surprising happens. You discover that peace was not necessarily missing. It was buried underneath the mental noise you had been producing every day. The Stoics did not promise that life would become painless. They taught something more valuable. You can become the kind of person who does not need life to be painless in order to remain steady. That is a completely different goal, because if your peace depends on everything going well, then your peace is fragile. But if your peace depends on the quality of your judgment, your character, and your response, then circumstances may shake you without destroying you. So as we move through these 7 things, don't simply listen. Watch yourself. Notice which lesson irritates you. Notice which one feels obvious. And especially notice which one makes you think, I know someone who desperately needs to hear this. Because very often, the lesson that immediately reminds us of another person is the lesson we most need to examine in ourselves. Now let's begin with the first thing you must stop doing, and it may be one of the most common causes of unnecessary suffering in modern life. Lesson 1. Stop trying to control what was never yours to control. Imagine waking up tomorrow morning with a simple decision. You will control only what genuinely belongs to you. Your judgments, your choices, your actions, your effort, your response. Everything else, you release. You do not control whether someone respects you. You do not control whether someone understands you. You do not control whether someone stays. You do not control whether a stranger criticizes you. You do not control the economy. You do not control the weather. You do not control the past. You do not control another person's emotions. And you certainly do not control what someone thinks about you when you are not in the room. Yet how much of our mental energy goes into exactly these things? Consider social media. Someone posts something. You interpret it. You compare yourself. You wonder why they have something you don't. You become irritated. You write a response. You check whether they responded. Then you check again. A few minutes later, you have spent 20 minutes emotionally reacting to someone who may not even know you exist. That is not freedom. That is voluntary imprisonment. Epictetus built much of his philosophy around distinguishing what is within our control from what is not. The distinction is simple. Living it is difficult because the human mind wants certainty. Psychologically, uncertainty can feel threatening. When we cannot control an outcome, the mind often tries to manufacture control through rumination. We think, if I analyze this enough, maybe I can prevent something bad from happening. So we replay, we predict, we calculate, we worry, we create imaginary conversations. We prepare responses to arguments that have not happened. And for a moment this feels productive. But rumination often creates the illusion of action without producing actual action. You are moving mentally, without moving reality. Imagine standing beside an ocean and trying to command the waves. You could scream at them. You could negotiate with them. You could become angry when they refuse to obey. Or you could learn how to swim. That is the Stoic difference. The Stoic does not waste his strength demanding that reality become obedient. He develops the ability to navigate reality as it is. This does not mean becoming passive. Quite the opposite. If your business is failing, you can improve your strategy. If your relationship is unhealthy, you can communicate or leave. If your health needs attention, you can change your habits. If you made a mistake, you can correct it. But after you have done what is within your power, there comes a moment when you must stop wrestling with the uncontrollable. That moment is where peace begins. Marcus Aurelius understood this tension intimately. As emperor, he had enormous responsibilities. He could make decisions affecting armies, laws, and the administration of an empire. But even an emperor could not command illness to disappear. He could not force every soldier to remain loyal. He could not make every citizen behave wisely. He could not prevent death, and he could not make the future reveal itself. His responsibility was not to control everything. It was to govern himself well within what circumstances allowed. That principle is incredibly relevant today. Maybe you are waiting for someone to apologize. Maybe you are waiting for someone to finally recognize your value. Maybe you are waiting for your family to understand your choices. Maybe you are waiting for your business to succeed. Maybe you are waiting for someone to text you back. And every day you give these things more attention. But ask yourself, what part of this situation actually belongs to me? If the answer is your action, take the action. If the answer is your attitude, correct the attitude. If the answer is your effort, give your best effort. But if the answer is someone else's decision, release it. Not because you don't care, because you understand the limits of your power. There is enormous strength in saying, I will do everything that is mine to do, and I will stop demanding that reality obey me. That sentence can change the way you experience rejection. It can change the way you experience criticism. It can change the way you experience uncertainty. And eventually, it can change the way you experience life itself. Because peace is not the reward for controlling everything. Peace is what becomes possible when you stop trying to control everything. So tonight, before you sleep, think about the one situation occupying your mind most heavily. Ask yourself 3 questions. What can I control? What can I influence? What must I accept? Then act on the first. Work intelligently with the second. And release the third, because the mind becomes lighter when it stops carrying responsibilities that were never its own. But this leads to a deeper problem. Even after we learn what we cannot control, we often continue carrying something else, something invisible, something that can follow us for years. And in the next part, we will examine the habit that keeps people emotionally chained to the past long after the event itself is over. Because sometimes the person who hurt you is no longer thinking about you at all, while you are still giving them space inside your mind. Stop carrying what already happened. There is something strange about the human mind. The body lives in the present, but the mind can spend years somewhere else. A conversation from yesterday, a betrayal from 5 years ago, a mistake from your childhood, a relationship that ended long ago, a moment when someone embarrassed you, a decision you wish you had made differently. The event is finished. The people may have moved on. The room may no longer exist. The circumstances may have completely changed. And yet, somehow, you can close your eyes tonight and return there. You can hear the words again, feel the anger again, feel the humiliation again, feel the regret again. And for a few moments, your mind behaves as though the past has become the present. This is why the second thing you must stop doing if you want inner peace is this. Lesson 2. Stop punishing yourself for the past. The Stoics did not believe that wisdom meant having no regrets. They understood that human beings make mistakes. What mattered was what happened after the mistake. Seneca repeatedly examined the danger of allowing yesterday to dominate today. He understood that time is one of the few things human beings can never recover. Money can sometimes be earned again. Reputation can sometimes be rebuilt. Possessions can sometimes be replaced, but yesterday cannot be purchased back. And yet we often spend today's mental energy trying to negotiate with yesterday. Think about how irrational that is. You cannot change the event, but you can change your relationship with the event. That distinction is enormous. Suppose you made a terrible decision several years ago. Maybe you trusted the wrong person. Maybe you wasted money. Maybe you abandoned an opportunity. Maybe you behaved badly towards someone you loved. Maybe you failed when everyone expected you to succeed. The immature mind says, I must keep suffering because I made that mistake. The wiser mind asks, what can this mistake teach me? Those two responses create completely different lives. One turns pain into punishment. The other turns pain into wisdom. Psychology gives us a useful way to understand this. When we repeatedly replay a negative event, we can reinforce the emotional associations connected to it. The mind begins creating a familiar pathway. Something reminds you of the original event. The memory appears. The emotion follows. Then the emotion creates another round of thinking. And the cycle continues. You may believe you are solving the past, but you may simply be rehearsing it. This is why there is a difference between reflection and rumination. Reflection asks, what happened and what can I learn? Rumination asks, why did this happen to me? What if I had done something different? Why didn't they treat me better? Reflection produces direction. Rumination produces exhaustion. The Stoic approach is not to erase the past. It is to extract the lesson and stop paying emotional rent on a house you no longer live in. Imagine carrying a heavy stone everywhere you go. You wake up with it. You take it to work. You bring it into conversations. You carry it while eating. You carry it into bed. Someone asks why you are exhausted, and you explain, because this stone was given to me years ago. But the question is not who gave you the stone. The question is, why are you still carrying it? Some of you are carrying old insults. Some are carrying old rejection. Some are carrying old failures. Some are carrying guilt. Some are carrying resentment toward people who may not even remember what they did. At some point, forgiveness becomes less about the other person and more about refusing to let the past control the present. Forgiveness does not mean saying that what happened was acceptable. It means refusing to make the wound your permanent identity. You can remember without remaining trapped. You can learn without remaining bitter. You can acknowledge what happened without allowing it to dictate what happens next. And sometimes the person you need to forgive is yourself, not because you did nothing wrong, but because you have already understood the lesson. There is a moment when accountability has done its job. You admitted the mistake. You learned. You changed. You apologized if necessary. You repaired what could be repaired. And now continuing to hate yourself is no longer accountability. It is attachment. So ask yourself tonight, am I learning from my past, or am I repeatedly reliving it? Because there is a difference. And if the past has already taught you what it came to teach you, you are allowed to walk forward. The past can be a teacher, but it should never become your prison. And once you stop carrying yesterday everywhere you go, another source of suffering becomes visible. The opinions of other people. Because even when you finally make peace with your past, you can still destroy your present by constantly asking, what will they think? And that brings us to the third thing you must stop doing. Lesson 3. Stop explaining yourself to people who have decided not to understand you. There is a particular kind of exhaustion that comes from constantly trying to prove your intentions. You explain why you made the decision. Then you explain why you reacted. Then you explain what you meant. Then you explain what you didn't mean. Then you explain yourself again because someone misunderstood the explanation. And suddenly, your entire life becomes a courtroom. You are the defendant. Everyone else is the jury, and every decision requires a defense. But ask yourself something uncomfortable. Who told you that everyone deserves an explanation? The Stoics understood that reputation is external. You can influence it. You cannot completely control it. People will interpret you through their own experiences, expectations, insecurities, and biases. Two people can watch you do exactly the same thing and reach completely different conclusions. So, if your peace depends on everyone understanding you correctly, you have given your peace away. Marcus Aurelius constantly reminded himself to focus on character rather than applause.
Why?
Because public opinion changes quickly. The same crowd that praises you today may criticize you tomorrow. If you build your identity around approval, you become emotionally dependent on an audience that can change its mind at any moment. Look at modern social media. Someone posts a criticism, you feel the urge to respond. You write a paragraph. Delete it. Write another. Post it. Then you wait. Who liked it? Who disagreed? Who misunderstood? Who responded? You have now handed strangers control over your nervous system. And the irony is that most of them will forget the argument within hours, but you may carry it for days. This is where emotional intelligence becomes essential. Not every emotional impulse deserves an action. You can feel the need to defend yourself without defending yourself. You can feel anger without sending the message. You can feel misunderstood without beginning a 20-minute explanation. You can feel rejected without begging for acceptance. That is self-control. Silence does not always mean weakness. Sometimes silence means, I know who I am and I do not need to convince everyone. Of course, there are moments when explanation is necessary. If you have harmed someone, take responsibility. If you have made a mistake at work, communicate clearly. If someone you love genuinely wants to understand you, speak honestly. Stoicism is not an excuse for emotional avoidance. The point is different. Do not confuse clarity with validation seeking. Explain when explanation serves a purpose. Do not explain simply because you cannot tolerate being misunderstood. That distinction can save you enormous mental energy. Think about Diogenes. He became famous for deliberately rejecting many social conventions and living in radical simplicity. He was not obsessed with appearing respectable to everyone. His philosophy challenged the assumptions of his society. Whether or not one agrees with every aspect of his lifestyle, there is something powerful in the underlying lesson. If you need universal approval before you can live according to your principles, you will never truly live according to your principles. Someone will always disagree. Someone will always criticize. Someone will always misunderstand. Someone will always think you should have chosen differently. The question is not, can I make everyone approve of me? The question is, can I remain faithful to what I know is right? That is a much stronger foundation, and this becomes especially important when you begin changing. When you become more disciplined, some people will call you distant. When you establish boundaries, some will call you selfish. When you stop chasing attention, some will say you have changed. When you stop participating in unnecessary drama, someone may accuse you of thinking you're better than everyone else. You do not have to accept every accusation, but you also do not have to fight every accusation. Let your actions accumulate. Character is built slowly. Eventually, consistency speaks louder than explanation. So the next time you feel the urge to defend yourself, pause. Ask, am I explaining because this person genuinely needs clarity or because I desperately need their approval? That single question can reveal more about your emotional state than you realize. And if the answer is approval, be quiet. Breathe. Let the discomfort pass. You may discover that the world does not collapse when you stop defending yourself. In fact, something much more valuable may happen. You begin hearing your own voice again. But there is another trap waiting. Because even after you stop seeking everyone's approval, you can still destroy your peace by measuring your life against theirs. Their money, their relationships, their appearance, their career, their achievements, their lifestyle, their success. And that brings us to the next battle. Before we continue, take a second and think about these first 3 lessons. What are you still trying to control that was never truly yours? What part of your past are you still carrying? And whose approval are you still trying to earn? You don't need to answer publicly, but if one of these questions hit you deeply, write your answer in the comments. Sometimes putting a thought into words is the first step toward releasing it. And if you're finding value in this journey, take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to the channel. Not because a button changes your life, but because every time you return to ideas like these, you reinforce the kind of mind you are trying to build. Now let's continue. Because the next lesson is one of the most dangerous habits of the modern mind. It can make you feel unsuccessful even when your life is improving. It can make you feel behind even when you're moving forward. And it can steal your happiness without taking a single thing away from you. Lesson 4. Stop comparing your life to someone else's. Imagine two people walking through the same city. One looks at the buildings and feels inspired. The other looks at them and feels inadequate. Same city, same buildings, completely different experience.
Why?
Because reality is not experienced only through circumstances. It is filtered through interpretation. Comparison is one of the mind's easiest ways to manufacture dissatisfaction. You see someone's success and immediately calculate your own failure. You see someone's relationship and question yours. You see someone's body and criticize your own. You see someone's house, car, career, vacation, or lifestyle. And suddenly your ordinary Tuesday feels like evidence that your life is going nowhere. But you are comparing your behind the scenes with someone else's highlight reel. You know your doubts, your unfinished plans, your financial worries, your mistakes, your insecurities, your bad days. But when you look at someone else, you usually see the surface. This creates a psychological distortion. You compare your complete reality with their selected presentation, and then you wonder why you feel inferior. The Stoics would redirect your attention. Your competition is not another person's life. Your competition is the person you were yesterday. Seneca understood that endless desire creates endless dissatisfaction. If you constantly define enough by what someone else possesses, enough will always move farther away. You earn more. Then someone earns more than you. You become fit. Then someone becomes fitter. You gain followers. Someone has more. You achieve something. Someone achieves it earlier. If your happiness depends on being ahead, you have created a game you can never permanently win, because there will always be someone ahead. Instead, build an internal scoreboard. Did you become more disciplined? Did you control your anger better? Did you keep your promise to yourself? Did you spend less time wasting your attention? Did you become kinder without becoming weak? Did you become stronger without becoming cruel? Did you respond with wisdom where you once reacted with anger? Those victories rarely receive applause, but they are the victories that create a powerful life. So tomorrow morning when you wake up, don't ask, "Am I ahead of everyone else?" Ask, "Am I becoming better than the person I was yesterday?" That is a competition worth entering. And once you stop comparing, you create space for something even more valuable. Gratitude. Because you begin noticing what is already present instead of constantly measuring what is missing. But inner peace requires another sacrifice. You must learn to stop feeding the things that keep your mind noisy. The power of not reacting. There is a moment that happens in almost every human life. Someone says something that hurts you. Maybe they insult you. Maybe they disrespect you. Maybe they deliberately provoke you. Maybe they betray you. And instantly something inside you rises. Your heart beats faster. Your body becomes tense. Your mind begins preparing a response. You imagine exactly what you will say. You want them to understand how badly they crossed the line. You want them to feel what you felt. And there is one dangerous thought hiding underneath all of it. I need to respond right now. But what if you don't? What if you wait? What if you allow the first wave of emotion to pass before deciding what deserves your attention? That small pause may look insignificant, but it can separate a disciplined person from a person controlled by impulse. And that brings us to the fifth thing you must stop doing if you want inner peace. Lesson 5, stop reacting to everything. The Stoics understood that anger can feel powerful while actually making you weaker. When someone provokes you, the easiest thing in the world is to react. The difficult thing is to remain the author of your response. Epictetus emphasized that events themselves do not automatically determine our judgments about them. Between what happens and what we do about it, there is a space where judgment can occur. That space may be only a few seconds, but those seconds matter. Imagine someone insulting you in public. The first impulse is, "I need to defend myself." But pause. Does responding improve your situation? Does it protect your values? Does it solve the problem? Or are you simply trying to relieve the discomfort you feel right now? That last question is important. Because many reactions are not actually solutions. They are emotional releases. You send the angry message because you want the pressure inside you to disappear. You argue because you want to feel powerful again. You post something indirectly because you want someone specific to see it. You retaliate because you want the other person to experience your pain. For a few moments you may feel better. Then the consequences arrive. Another argument, another message, another explanation, another sleepless night. The original problem may have been small. Your reaction makes it enormous. This is why emotional regulation is not about suppressing emotion. It is about refusing to let emotion become your commander. Anger can tell you that something matters. Fear can tell you that something feels threatening. Sadness can tell you that something has been lost. But emotions are signals. They are not always instructions. Think of a warning light on a car dashboard. The light tells you something requires attention. You don't smash the dashboard because you dislike the warning. You investigate. Your emotions deserve the same treatment. Notice them. Understand them. Then choose your action. This is where Marcus Aurelius becomes particularly relevant. As emperor, he dealt with conflict, political intrigue, military crises, and people who did not necessarily share his interests. He could not afford to let every irritation dictate his behavior. A ruler who reacts emotionally to every provocation becomes predictable, and what is predictable can be manipulated. The same is true in ordinary life. If people know exactly what makes you angry, they know how to control you. If someone can make you lose your temper with one sentence, they have discovered a button. If a stranger can ruin your entire day with one comment, they have been given enormous power. If someone can make you abandon your principles because they provoked you, they are not merely influencing your emotions. They are influencing your behavior. And this is why silence can be a form of strength. Not the silence of fear, the silence of someone who is deciding. There are moments when you should speak. There are moments when you should establish a boundary. There are moments when you should leave. But you should not let another person's emotional state determine your emotional state automatically. Imagine two people shouting at each other. One becomes louder. The other becomes calmer. Which person is actually more difficult to control? The answer is obvious. The calm person. Because calmness creates options. Anger narrows them. When you're angry, your mind often becomes focused on winning the immediate battle. When you're calm, you can think about the larger war. And sometimes the larger victory is simply refusing to become the person your opponent wants you to become. So the next time someone provokes you, try this. Pause. Take one breath, then another. Do not answer immediately. Ask, what outcome do I actually want? Then ask, will my response move me toward that outcome? If yes, speak. If no, silence may be wiser. And remember, you do not have to attend every argument you are invited to. Some battles disappear when you refuse to enter them. But there is another type of battle that is even more exhausting. A battle against people who repeatedly drain you. People who manipulate. People who constantly complain. People who disrespect boundaries. People who create chaos and then expect you to clean it up. And if you want peace, you must learn another difficult Stoic lesson. You must stop believing that everyone deserves unlimited access to you. Lesson 6. Stop giving your energy to people who constantly drain it. There is a difference between being compassionate and being available to everyone. The Stoics valued human beings and recognized our responsibilities toward one another. But virtue does not require you to surrender your entire life to other people's chaos. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for yourself is create distance. Think about how certain conversations make you feel. You speak to someone for 10 minutes, nothing dramatic happens, and yet afterward you feel exhausted. You replay the conversation. You question yourself. You feel guilty. You feel irritated. You feel emotionally heavy. Then you speak to someone else. The conversation ends, and you feel lighter. That difference matters. Your attention is not infinite. Your emotional energy is not infinite. Your time is not infinite. Every person you allow deep access to your life influences your mental environment. This does not mean labeling everyone as toxic. It means becoming conscious about boundaries. Modern psychology frequently discusses emotional contagion. the way emotions can spread through social interaction. A constantly angry person can make a room feel angry. A constantly anxious person can increase anxiety around them. A cynical person can gradually influence how you interpret the world. And if you spend enough time around certain behaviors, they can begin to feel normal. This is why choosing your environment matters. The ancient Stoics did not tell us to become isolated from humanity. They taught us to participate in society without becoming slaves to its disorder. Marcus Aurelius often reflected on how difficult people should be treated. His answer was not revenge. It was perspective. People behave according to their understanding, character, and circumstances. But understanding someone does not mean permitting everything they do. You can understand why someone is angry and still refuse to be mistreated. You can understand someone's insecurity and still establish a boundary. You can forgive someone and still keep your distance. These are not contradictions. They are signs of maturity. One of the biggest mistakes people make is believing that boundaries require anger. They don't. You don't need to hate someone to leave. You don't need to insult someone to say no. You don't need to create a dramatic ending. Sometimes the strongest boundary is simple. This relationship no longer allows me to live according to my values, so I am stepping away. No revenge. No public announcement. No long explanation. Just action. And this is where the Stoic principle of focusing on what you control returns. You cannot control another person's personality. You cannot force them to become self-aware. You cannot make a manipulative person suddenly become reasonable. You cannot rescue someone who refuses responsibility for their own life. But you can control your participation. You can control your availability. You can control your boundaries. You can decide how much access someone receives. Think of your attention like a garden. If you allow every weed to grow because you are afraid of hurting the weeds, eventually there will be no room for anything beautiful. Your mind works the same way. You must protect what you are trying to cultivate. Peace, discipline, wisdom, focus, self-respect, character. Sometimes protecting those things requires saying no. And no is one of the most powerful words in a disciplined person's vocabulary. No, I won't participate in this gossip. No, I won't argue about this. No, I won't continue this conversation while being disrespected. No, I cannot give you what you are demanding. No, I don't need to prove myself. No, I will not sacrifice my peace just to avoid disappointing you. That last one is particularly important because many people are not controlled by fear of conflict. They are controlled by fear of disappointing others. They say yes while their entire body says no. They agree while resentment grows underneath. They remain available because they are afraid that boundaries will make them seem selfish. But eventually, the person who never says no begins resenting everyone who keeps asking. And that resentment is often created by their own inability to establish boundaries. You don't need to become cold. Become clear. You don't need to become selfish. Become responsible for your own life. And you don't need to remove everyone from your world. Simply stop giving everyone unlimited access to your mind. Because peace requires space. And sometimes you cannot hear your own thoughts because you have filled your life with everyone else's voices. But even after you create boundaries, there is still one more trap. You can remove the wrong people. You can stop reacting. You can stop comparing. You can stop explaining yourself and still remain restless.
Why?
Because sometimes the greatest source of disturbance is not outside you. It is the endless desire to have more.
More money.
More status. More recognition. More possessions. More followers. More success. More attention. More achievement. And this is where Stoicism becomes especially uncomfortable. Because the problem may not be that you have too little. The problem may be that your mind has learned to believe that more will finally make you enough. Before we move forward, take a moment. Think about the last time someone provoked you. Did they control your behavior? Think about the person who constantly drains your energy. Have you given them more access than they deserve? And think about how often you say yes when you actually want to say no. If you recognize yourself in these lessons, don't judge yourself. Awareness is not failure. Awareness is the beginning of change. And if this message is helping you see your life differently, like this video, share it with someone who needs a reminder to protect their peace, and subscribe to the channel. Then comment below. I choose peace, not as an empty phrase, as a reminder. Because sometimes the smallest decision becomes the beginning of a completely different life. Now let's continue. Lesson 7. Stop believing that more will finally make you happy. There is a strange trap hidden inside ambition. You tell yourself, when I make more money, I'll relax. Then you make more money. When I reach that position, I'll finally feel successful. You reach it. Then, when more people respect me, I'll feel confident. They respect you. But the satisfaction doesn't last. So the mind moves the finish line again and again and again. This is the hedonic treadmill, the tendency for people to adapt to improvements and return toward familiar emotional levels. You get the thing you wanted. For a while, it feels extraordinary. Then it becomes normal. And once it becomes normal, you want something else. The problem isn't ambition. Ambition can be noble. The problem is expecting achievement to permanently solve an internal problem. The Stoics were not against wealth. Seneca himself was wealthy, but Stoic philosophy repeatedly questioned our relationship with possessions. Do you own your possessions, or do your possessions own you? There is a difference. A person can have money without worshipping money. A person can enjoy comfort without becoming dependent upon comfort. A person can pursue success without making success the foundation of their identity. This distinction matters because if your identity depends on external achievements, every setback becomes an identity crisis. Lose money. I'm a failure. Lose status. Nobody respects me. Lose a relationship. I'm unworthy. Lose a job. My life is over. The Stoic builds something deeper. Character. Because possessions can disappear. Positions can disappear. Beauty changes. Popularity fades. But character is something you continue building through your choices. Imagine two people losing the same amount of money. One thinks, everything I have is gone. The other thinks, I have lost money. I have not lost my ability to think, act, learn, and rebuild. Same loss. Different interpretation. Different psychological experience. This is why the Stoics practiced voluntary simplicity, not because poverty was inherently virtuous, but because dependence creates vulnerability. If you occasionally learn to live with less, you discover something important. You need less than your desires have convinced you. Try this in modern life. Spend an evening without constantly checking your phone. Eat a simple meal without needing entertainment. Walk without headphones. Sit quietly. Wear something ordinary without worrying about appearance. Spend time without purchasing anything. You may discover that discomfort rises, and that discomfort is information. It shows you how dependent your mind has become on stimulation. The goal is not to reject pleasure. The goal is to remain free when pleasure is unavailable, because if you cannot be content without constant stimulation, then your comfort has become a cage. Zeno of Citium, the founder of Stoicism, taught in the public spaces of Athens rather than building a philosophy around luxury or status. The tradition that emerged from him emphasized virtue as the foundation of a good life. Not possessions, not applause, not endless consumption. Virtue, wisdom, courage, justice, self-control. These are not glamorous words in an age obsessed with visible success, but they are durable. Ask yourself, if everything external disappeared tomorrow, what would remain of me? Your answer reveals where your identity truly lives. And perhaps that is why inner peace can feel so difficult. We are constantly trying to build an external life strong enough to compensate for an internal life we have neglected. We buy more, achieve more, post more, chase more. But the mind remains hungry. The Stoics would tell you to reverse the process. Build the inside first. Then let the outside become a tool rather than a master. Because when you no longer need more to prove that you are enough, ambition becomes cleaner. You can pursue wealth without worshipping it. Pursue success without becoming its slave. Pursue recognition without needing it. And enjoy life without demanding that life constantly entertain you. That is freedom. But there is one final enemy waiting underneath all 7 lessons. And it is more subtle than anger, more subtle than comparison, more subtle than approval. It hides behind the voice that says, I should be further ahead by now. I should have achieved more. I should be stronger. I should have figured everything out. This voice can make even a disciplined person feel like a failure. And in the final part, we will confront it. Because the deepest form of inner peace comes when you stop fighting the person you are today. While still having the courage to become the person you are capable of becoming, the final lesson is not about becoming perfect. It is about becoming at peace with the process of becoming. Perhaps inner peace was never something you needed to find. Perhaps it was something you needed to stop disturbing. For years, you may have believed that peace would come when life finally became easier, when people respected you, when your finances improved, when the right person arrived, when your goals were achieved, when the past stopped hurting, when everyone finally understood you. But life rarely becomes perfectly quiet. There will always be another problem, another uncertainty, another difficult person, another disappointment, another decision. The Stoics understood this. They did not wait for a perfect world before becoming peaceful. They trained themselves to remain steady inside an imperfect one. And that is the real lesson behind everything we have discussed. Stop trying to control what was never yours. Stop allowing the past to steal the present. Stop explaining yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. Stop comparing your journey to someone else's. Stop reacting to every provocation. Stop giving unlimited access to people who constantly disturb your peace, and stop believing that you need more before you are finally enough. None of these things require you to become cold. They require you to become free. Free from the need to control everyone. Free from the need to be understood by everyone. Free from the need to be admired. Free from the need to win every argument. Free from the need to have a perfect life. And perhaps most importantly, free from the belief that your peace must depend on circumstances you cannot control. Remember Epictetus. You may not control what happens, but you can work on how you respond. Remember Marcus Aurelius. You may not control the behavior of other people, but you can choose your own character. Remember Seneca. Your time is limited. Do not spend it endlessly fighting battles that exist only inside your mind. And remember this whenever life becomes difficult. You do not need to control the storm. You need to learn how to stand in it. There will be days when you fail. Stand. There will be days when someone disappoints you. Stand. There will be days when fear enters your mind. Stand. There will be days when your plans collapse. Stand. There will be days when you feel completely lost. Stand. Not because you are emotionless, not because nothing hurts, but because you know that pain does not get to decide who you become. That is Stoic strength. Not having no emotions. Having emotions without becoming their prisoner. Not avoiding difficulty. Becoming capable of meeting difficulty. Not controlling everyone around you. Controlling the part of yourself that is actually yours. And tonight, before you close this video, ask yourself one final question. What am I willing to let go of so that I can finally have peace? Maybe it is resentment. Maybe it is comparison. Maybe it is the need for approval. Maybe it is an old mistake. Maybe it is someone else's opinion. Maybe it is the desperate need to control an outcome. Whatever it is, release one piece of it. You don't have to change your entire life tonight. Just make one decision, one boundary, one pause, one act of self-control, one moment where you choose wisdom instead of reaction. Because a peaceful life is not created in one extraordinary moment. It is created through hundreds of small decisions that nobody else sees. And eventually, you will notice something. The same things that once controlled you no longer have the same power. The criticism still exists, but you don't need to answer it. The uncertainty still exists, but you don't panic. The rejection still hurts, but you don't chase. The past still exists, but you don't live there. The world is still chaotic, but your mind is quieter. And that is when you realize peace was never about making the world obey you. Peace was about no longer allowing the world to control you. So walk forward, quietly, without needing everyone to understand, without needing everyone to approve, without needing everything to go according to plan. Do what is yours to do. Release what is not. Protect your attention. Guard your character. Choose your response, and let tomorrow arrive when it arrives, because you have today. And today is enough. You cannot control everything that happens to you, but you can control the person you choose to become because of it. That is your freedom. That is your strength. And that is where your inner peace begins. If this message meant something to you, like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And subscribe to the channel for more Stoic wisdom, psychology, discipline, and mental resilience. And before you leave, comment, "I choose peace." Make it more than a comment. Make it a decision. Because from this moment forward, you don't need to fight every battle. You don't need to answer every insult. You don't need to chase every person. You don't need to prove your worth. You don't need to control the uncontrollable. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is simply breathe. Let go and keep walking. Choose peace, choose discipline, choose yourself.